Taxes are the most common way to fund hard-to-pay-for public goods like national defense, roadways, and social welfare that require income to be transferred from one segment of the population to another. State-sponsored lotteries are supplementary mechanisms also used to fund public goods and are often earmarked for a particular need, like social welfare. State-sponsored lotteries are controversial fundraising mechanisms for two reasons. They are state-sponsored gambling, and lower-income groups play lotteries disproportionately, making them the equivalent of regressive taxes. A state-sponsored lottery works by raising money through lottery ticket sales and using this revenue to fund prizes, pay for the costs of administering the lottery, and to distribute funds to the targeted social welfare recipients. In China, the Chinese Welfare Lottery is an emblem of China's progress as a developing nation. Meeting welfare needs becomes more pressing and difficult as China's growth decelerates and the population ages. Efficient welfare fundraising tools are critical weapons in the battle against rising inequality. The CWL is formally part of the national funding of public goods, provided under the Chinese Communist Party State Social Compact with its citizens. One senior government official said the welfare lottery began as a donation coupon, while the head of a charity receiving welfare funds called the CWL the future of the country. But according to other government and private welfare stakeholders, the CWL is chaotic and full of loopholes. In fact, due to stretched governmental finances and an insufficient tax system, more reliance is being placed on the state-run lottery, which is a major contributor to provincial budgets. The CWL is now the second largest state-run lottery in the world. At 206 billion won, around 33 billion in lottery ticket revenues as of 2014, the CWL enterprise is the size of a Fortune 500 company and derives some of its success by being one of the only legal forms of gambling in mainland China. As every 1 won spent on a lottery ticket winds its way toward provincial government ledger, it should produce 0.5 renminbi in prizes, 0.35 renminbi in welfare funds, and 0.15 renminbi in administrative expenses, according to Central Ministry of Finance lottery policy. Unfortunately, at the national level, the actual welfare fund payments are only 12% of lottery ticket revenues. The CWL deviates from its promise to allocate 35% of revenue to welfare funds and from its promise to fully distribute the money it does allocate to the welfare fund. And while the government does not provide a complete accounting, the CWL appears not to adhere to the promise of delivering a minimum of 50% to prizes and/or to spend a maximum of 15% on administrative expenses. In fact, cumulative per capita allocations to the local welfare funds between 2010 and 2013 ranged between a high of 22% of revenues in Xinjiang to a low of 5% in Tibet, and payouts from these funds range from a low of 0% in Tibet to a high of 26% in Xinjiang. This paper, Wagering on Welfare, explaining provincial variation in the Chinese welfare lottery, asks the research question: is there a provincial variation in the relationship between lottery ticket revenues and welfare fund payments in the Chinese welfare lottery? And if so, what explains the provincial variation? The paper seeks the provincial sources of this national welfare gap, a key measure of the redistributive success of the lottery, explaining province-to-province variation in lottery revenues versus lottery welfare fund payments. Using data from the National Bureau of Statistics, with the known caveats about China's national data, this study tests the hypothesis that there is provincial variation in a lottery's revenue, welfare payments, and the welfare gap explained by provincial opportunities, abilities, and incentives. Specifically, the research suggests that provincial income, taxes per capita, the depth of local bureaucratic layers, and the presence of mobile telecommunications and foreign investment are sources of variation in translating soaring lottery ticket revenues into welfare fund payments. The study finds that overall, the CWL provides very little welfare in proportion to ticket sales, has high administrative expenses, and material unaccounted for funds. The study finds that there is significant provincial variation in the CWL, and the sources of this variation are local income, also known as gross regional product or GRP, local taxing discipline, and local mobile density. The non-linear relationship between GRP and welfare fund payments suggests that the CWL is not operated exclusively as a social welfare funding mechanism. Indeed, there are 4 lottery micro-regimes: high GRP high welfare, high GRP low welfare, low GRP high welfare, and low GRP low welfare. These lottery micro-regimes do not mirror China's typical rural-urban interior coast divides. In the high GRP, low welfare provinces like Guangdong, the lottery is decoupled from welfare. Revenues raised from the lottery often fail to reach welfare recipients. Other local conditions, particularly tax discipline and the presence of mobile telecommunications and lottery equipment manufacturers, explain how revenues might be diverted. The case study of Guangdong illustrates it in practice. Provincial governments' close ties to mobile phone operators and offshore gaming equipment manufacturers may explain revenue leakage from the lottery into private hands. The results imply that the CWL is not fulfilling its intended role as a national redistributive mechanism for welfare. The CWL contributes to welfare regionalism and could be perpetuating, rather than minimizing, existing regional economic divides, an area for further research. This paper is the first English-language study of the CWL as a welfare funding mechanism. It adds to the literature on how China delivers its welfare promise and more broadly to the scholarship on lotteries as public goods funding mechanisms, highlighting the growing influence of mobile lottery play on welfare lottery results. During the writing of this paper, China's central authorities began a corruption investigation into provincial welfare lotteries, a story which is still unfolding. This research supports the idea that reforms are needed to discourage provincial opportunism and to realign the Chinese welfare lottery with its stated purpose.